Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate Day number 672, Wednesday, January the 23rd, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in. Of course, it is Wednesday. That is the day that I take out the trash. Every Wednesday, I take out the trash. And now I'm having pasta every Wednesday night, in addition to taking out the trash. It used to be chicken. Now it's pasta. I like pasta. And tonight it's going to be lasagna with garlic bread, meat lasagna. We'll never have vegetable lasagna. It's got to be meat lasagna with extra meat. Now, let's get to it. Well, McConnell and Schumer have announced that they've got a deal to have two votes on two separate bills in the Senate. Now, this first bill is a bill which will include the $5.7 billion for the wall and the provisions that Trump laid out for the DACA people for 3 years. It's basically what he laid out in his presentation this past Saturday when he laid out his plan in order to negotiate with the Democrats. And of course, many of you saw that, and so you know what it involves. So that's essentially the first bill that they're going to vote on. Then they're going to have a second vote, and the second vote is going to be for another bill, which is essentially a CR, a continuing resolution, to fund the government for 3 more weeks. It will not include anything having to do with the wall or border security. It'll just be a bill to fund everything, to get the government reopened, but will not go into any funding for any border security, the wall, or anything like that. So what the hell is going on with this, and what's going to happen? Well, okay, it's... I'm not in the Senate, so I don't know where the votes are or what the vote tally is or anything like that, what's going on behind the scenes. But I guess just off the top of my head, hearing about this, I would have to think that neither of these bills are going to pass, especially the second bill, the one for the continuing resolution to fund the government for 3 more weeks. I have no idea why any Republican would vote for this. Why would you do this? It's essentially caving in a way. You're playing into the Democrats' hands. You are voting for something that doesn't include border wall funding, and you're going to pass a bill that reopens the government. That's the negotiating point. That's the leverage. If you do that, you take away the leverage. Then what reason do the Democrats ever have to give you money for a border wall? If you've already given them the money to open the government, you've essentially caved. They open the government, Trump doesn't get his border wall. They win. And what, you're counting in 3 weeks on coming back and the Democrats are all of a sudden going to give you the $5.7 billion to fund the wall? What kind of thinking is that? And why would Twitch McConnell bring it up? I can only think of one reason why Twitch would bring this up. And that is if Twitch thinks he's got some ghost of a chance of passing the first bill, which would essentially be what Trump laid out last Saturday. Now, maybe Twitch has got 6 to 9 Democrats, which he's going to need to pass it. But that still doesn't get it passed in the House. But I'll get back to that. Okay, so maybe, because see, I don't see the second bill. I don't see the CR. I don't see that many Republicans caving on this CR. So I don't see that going anywhere. I see that losing. I don't see that getting the votes it needs or even close. But this first bill, well, we know Romney said he would vote for it. But we still don't know about Susan Collins, and Murkowski is wavering on whether she would. Let's just assume that Collins and Murkowski will not support the first bill that gives the border wall funding. That would mean that you have 52 Republicans, which means that you would need 8 Democrats. So maybe Twitch McConnell has been working behind the scenes, and maybe he thinks he's got 8 Democrats who will support the first bill. Maybe he thinks he's got 8 Democrats. Maybe he does. Now, he's probably got at least 3 or 4, like Joe Manchin and a few of these others. But I don't know if he's got 8, but maybe he does. Maybe he's going to throw him some other type of bone. Maybe there's something he can do to get these votes. But let's just assume that happens. Let's assume that Twitch McConnell has got 8 Democrats or 7 or 8 or 9 Democrats, whatever he needs to get the first bill passed, which provides the border wall funding, essentially what Trump laid out last Saturday. Then it would have to go over to the House. Now, what's going on there? Well, we don't know. But at this point, we know that there's been a lot of people, a lot of Democrats in the House now backtracking, moving away from Pelosi, because they're also looking at something. They've got their own personal elections to stand for in less than 2 years. This issue could kill them. So that's why they're breaking away from Pelosi in the House. But the bill can't be brought to the House without Pelosi. So what the Republicans may be trying to do is see if Twitch can get enough Democrats in the Senate to get it passed through the Senate. Then you get it over to the House, at which point it goes over to Kevin McCarthy. Now maybe he has been working the Democrats. Maybe he's found enough Democrats, along with all the Republicans he's got, to pass the bill. At which point, what they could do is, if Twitch does succeed in getting it passed in the Senate and they pass over to the House, at which point Kevin McCarthy could go to the microphone on all the media networks and say, okay, we're ready to pass the bill, reopen the government, and Trump's going to get his border wall because I've got enough Democrats to pass it. At which point, the calls will go out to Nancy Pelosi. All the pressure will be on her, because then people will be saying, well, are you going to bring it to the floor for a vote? McCarthy says it'll pass. He says he's got enough Republican and Democrat votes to pass the bill that Trump laid out last Saturday. Will you bring it to the floor for a vote? And if she says no, then it's really going to put a tremendous amount of pressure on her, and there's a lot of those people out of work. It's hurting a lot of Democrats more than it is Republicans, and she would look like the villain in all of this, because here you would have the Senate passing the bill that Trump wanted. You would have the House saying, hey, we got the votes, including Democrat votes, to pass this bill. Pelosi won't bring it up for a vote. She won't bring it up for a vote. She is holding up the government from reopening. She is holding up the funding for the border wall. She is blocking everything. She's the villain. And then everything and all the pressure shifts onto Pelosi. And she's also going to have all those Democrats who are facing difficult primaries or difficult elections, general elections, in less than 2 years, who are going to be breathing down her neck, saying, hey, we're going to fall on the sword so that you can settle a political score with the president. No way. So she'll be facing pressure from everywhere. Democrats on both sides, House member Democrats on both sides, the media, the Republicans breathing down her neck, Trump tweeting to death. It could really shift things and really put a tremendous amount of pressure on Madame Botox, probably enough to make her crack. So there's a bunch of different dynamics going on here, and we just don't know what the numbers are to be able to make an intelligent, or I shouldn't say intelligent, but an informed critique of exactly what to think here, or prediction. I can't make a prediction. I don't have the numbers. I don't have the information. But this is the only thing I can see, the only reason I can see that McConnell would try a stunt like this. It's the only reason I can think of, is that they think there's a deal there. And I don't mean a continuing resolution that don't fund the wall. McConnell's got to believe that there's somehow a path, along with McCarthy, somehow a path to get enough Democratic votes to get the president's bill signed. And that's the only reason I can think that they would even move at this point. If they didn't have the votes, and they know how many votes they got. They're vote counters. They're not going to come out and have either of these votes without knowing how many votes they have. You don't do that. It's not how things work. They know how many votes they have before they vote on things, or they don't vote on them. So they must know something we don't know. We'll keep watching. I sure will. Madame Botox has ordered the Sergeant of Arms not to allow any executive branch member or the president's staff or anyone like that into the House chamber. Okay, so this is basically what's going on. Weeks ago, as is customary, Madame Botox, as Speaker of the House, sent the typical standard invitation letter to the president to come in and do the State of the Union. The State of the Union is delivered in the House chamber on Capitol Hill. The Speaker of the House is essentially in charge of the House, and she can say who can and cannot come and address the House, including the president. So what happens? She sends this letter, the normal invitation. Then she reneges by sending another letter telling Trump, no, we decided we're not going to invite you to the Capitol building to give the speech, the State of the Union, because of the shutdown, even though we all know it's just political back and forth. It's nothing to do with the shutdown. Okay, so then what happens is Nancy Pelosi then contacts the sergeant of arms, who is the security for the Capitol building and answers to the speaker for the most part, and says, hey, you're not going to provide any entrance into the Capitol building by any member of the executive branch, the president's staff, or anything else. Okay? So then Trump apparently is defying that. He's apparently defying that. Now, he could give the State of the Union in the Senate. He could give it at a MAGA rally. He could give it at a high school. He could give it anywhere he wants, apparently. But in the Capitol building, at this point, based on the rules as far as we know, I mean, if I were him, I would go down to the border and give the damn State of the Union at the border, at the U.S.-Mexico border, and I would invite any Republicans that want to attend, and I would invite the Angel Moms, and I would invite the Border Patrol and everyone else. That's who I'd give the State of the Union to. That's what I would do. But apparently Trump is wanting to have a fight about this. He's wanting to have a showdown, because it appears that what we're hearing today is that he is defying Madame Botox, and he has directed his staff member to contact the Sergeant of Arms over at the Capitol building and let them know that they will be coming over to go through the security protocols and everything for Trump to give a speech in the Capitol building a week from today. So apparently he's not looking at a second alternative at this point. He's apparently trying to force the issue and override Nancy Pelosi or challenge her power on this rule. And he's basically saying, hey, I'm going to give it there whether you like it or not. I'm going to force the issue. So maybe he's just doing this to play with her head, and he has intentions of actually doing it somewhere else, and he's just playing a game. I'm not sure what's going on here, but it appears that either he wants to have a hardcore showdown and another fight with Pelosi on this issue of whether or not he can get access to the Capitol building, or he's got some other thing that he's doing that he's playing, or I don't know what's going on, but it's another classic power showdown between Pelosi and Trump, because Pelosi has got it in her head she's on a power trip, and everyone is pumped into her head that you're the most powerful person, most powerful woman in the world, you're the number 3 person in the world, and this and that, and she's got this idea in her head that as Speaker of the House, that she's even stated, we are an equal branch of government. Well, yes, the legislative branch is an equal branch of government, but the Speaker of the House is not an equal 1/3 to the president. No. The president is the chief executive. He is the executive branch. One man, the president. Madame Botox is the leader of the legislative branch, which consists of 435 people. So what that means is the president's power is equal to 435 people in the House, not one person. It's not her versus Trump in power. No. It's the executive branch is the president is equal to 435 people in the legislative branch. She's on a power trip and doesn't get it. Well, I just explained it for her. So we'll see who wins this fight. I wouldn't bet against Trump on this one. He just may go all the way. Well, we have Ocasio-Cortez, Marty Feldman Eyes Cortez, saying that the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. Man, I've been hearing this since I was 9 years old. I remember when I was 9, it was the Ice Age. We were all going to die in 20 years because of the Ice Age. Glaciers were going to cover all of North America. Then it was the ozone layer in the 80s. The ozone layer is going to disappear and we're all going to be radiated to death in 10 years. Then it was global warming. Then global cooling. Now it's climate change. And on and on and on and on. I've been hearing this shit for 40 years. It's fake news. It's propaganda. It's bullshit. Bullshit. And nothing more. This moron that they continue to put a microphone in front of her. And every time they do, she says something stupider than the last thing she said. And this is just one comment. I could go through a dozen of them. We should disqualify her from Dumbass of the Week because she'll never be beat. She'll be the Dumbass of the Week every week. She's dumber than freaking Mad Max and Pelosi put together. She's beyond stupid. And politically moronic. Okay. Next we have Biden, the Great White Hope, who says that Trump brought folks out from under the rocks and legitimized hate. Brought folks out from under the rocks to legitimize hate. You know, you would think that Biden, having paid attention to the rotten Reverend Clinton getting her ass kicked, largely because, you know, a lot of reasons, but certainly one major reason, because she dissed more than half the country when she came out and called us all deplorables. All of us in flyover country, we're all deplorable. We're in the basket of deplorables. Well, this is the exact same comment. This is just another way of saying it. He considers those of us who live in flyover country, in other words, if you don't live in California or Washington or Oregon, if you don't live in New York or Connecticut or New Jersey, well, then you're in flyover country. And therefore, you are folks who live under rocks. And you crawl out from under the rocks to vote for Trump to legitimize hate. I mean, this is the same exact type of statement. You know, he's basically saying that we all are slimy, creatures that live under rocks. That's what he's saying about us. That's why if I ever saw Joe Biden, I would just walk up and punch him in the face and then go do my 30 days. My boss would probably pay the fine and give me a promotion. Let's see. We have this fake news story. I'm not going to spend hardly any time on it. I just want to knock it down. The True Pundit. I don't read the True Pundit really. I used to, but too many of their stories got blown up and turned out to be false. I just don't pay any attention to them anymore. They never cite any sources. They don't even put the name on this story of the person who wrote it. I mean, there's not even a name. I'm looking for the name of the journalist who wrote the story. It's not even credited to any one person writing the story. And their source is high-ranking FBI officials believe. High-ranking FBI officials believe. But anyway, I'm talking about the story many of you see YouTubers commenting on. There's a lot of people talking about this. I'm telling you, man, I'm pretty sure that this is 99.9% bullshit. And there's nothing to it at all. But it's just another one of those stories that people throw out there, and I don't know why they do it. Maybe they're trying to do it to counter fake news on the left, but I don't like fake news, whether it's coming from the left or the right. And I wish these so-called conservative or pro-Trump sites who are putting out fake news would just stop it. Stop it. It doesn't help. Putting out fake news from the right's no better than putting it out from the left. It gets blown up. And it makes you look stupid. And it doesn't produce anything because it's fake. So the story I'm talking about is a story which the caption, the headline of the story is that high-ranking FBI officials believe that disgraced and fired FBI leaders are using the evidence from Anthony Weiner's laptop to stay out of prison. And they're making the case in the story that a bunch of these guys, McCabe and Strzok and Page and all these guys, secretly got copies of everything on the Weiner laptop, and they're threatening if you drop the dime on us or try to, prosecute us, we're going to tell everything we know, and it's going to get a bunch of you people in the deep state in trouble. Well, I mean, the first people who would be, in big trouble because of the stuff that's on the Weiner laptop is them. They're up to their eyeballs. Peter Strzok and McCabe were the two of the main guys, and Mary McCord over at the DOJ. They were the three main people who were negotiating the Weiner laptop and what to do about it, how to sit on it, how to bury it. We know that Strzok didn't even look at, based on the documents, didn't even look at hardly any, less than 5%. There were 665,000 some odd emails in there related to Hillary Clinton's emails. And they couldn't have looked at even 10% of them. They don't know what's there. Well, we're supposed to believe that as much as scrutiny and the fact that laptop went... we have to believe that all these people were able to get a copy of that laptop, even though the FBI guy himself at the lab talked about the difficulty in trying to mirror that laptop for various reasons. Technical reasons. He ran into a lot of problems, wasn't really able to do it, but we're supposed to believe all these people did it, plus they're using it as leverage and blackmail or whatever against other perps, even though what's there would incriminate them first, just as well as anybody else. And the idea that they even got these things, it's just this story again. It's just one of these stories that you see pop up, and again, no source, don't even name the person who wrote the article, and their source is high-ranking FBI officials believe. I'm telling you, folks, you run into a YouTube video where they're pushing this, or a story where they're writing about this, a blog or whatever, just blow it off. Don't waste your time unless you like, fake news, unless you like, hopium, unless you like reading shit that's fake because it makes you feel better. This doesn't make me feel better because I know it's bullshit. We have Hakeem Jeffries, the commie con man in the House, who is now called Trump the Grand Wizard of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The Grand Wizard of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. I remember when a comment like that would get your ass immediately censored, for sure, possibly forced to resign, and absolutely defeated in your next reelection. But we live in different times now where you can call the President of the United States a Grand Wizard living on 1600. The best of I can recall in memory is that the only true Grand Wizard we ever had in Washington that we know about was Congressman or Senator Byrd from Virginia. Senator Byrd from Virginia was a Grand Wizard of the KKK. He admitted it. So did Bill Clinton at his eulogy. And let's keep in mind that Mr. Byrd was Clinton's mentor. He was Bill Clinton's mentor. And the Clintons loved him. He was a Democrat from Virginia. Grand Wizard of the KKK. Do you remember any Democrats or left-wing media people criticizing Byrd? No. Never happened. He and his dog Billy. That's all they ever talked about. Never talked about the fact that he was, in fact, a Grand Wizard of the KKK. Trump is not. Jay Sekulow on TV talking about the two-hop rule. I don't have a lot of time to go into this, but he mentioned it. It kind of glossed over. They didn't spend very much time talking about it. So some of you may have caught that. And in case you don't know what they're talking about when he says the two-hop rule, when he's talking about the FISA warrant on Carter Page, because the anchor didn't actually stop and explain it or have Sekulow explain it. But for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, when you get a FISA warrant on somebody, you get to use what's called as the two-hop rule, which means that you not only get to listen to the person or completely monitor communications of the person you get the FISA on, but you get to monitor everyone that he talked to and everyone that they talked to. Which means, and what Sekulow is trying to say, is that by getting a FISA warrant on Carter Page, or Papadopoulos, or Michael Flynn, would invariably give you all of President Trump's communications. He would certainly be in that circle with two hops. That's what he was trying to say. Trump is going to meet with the kids from Covington Catholic, and that's very good. When you look at the massive media fails, just in the last week. I'm not even talking about the last month, the last year, or the last 2 years since Trump was president. I'm just saying, even just in the last week. First of all, about a week ago, we get the story from Haberman at the New York Times that the news story for the reason for the Trump investigation is now that Trump fired Comey, which was the reason a long time ago. So first we're told it's because of the dossier. Then the dossier gets blown up. That's what the New York Times told us. Then their story gets blown up and they say, no, it's actually Papadopoulos meeting with Downer. Then that gets blown up. So then they go back to collusion. Then that gets blown up again because there is no collusion. Then they're forced to go back to the dossier. They go back to the dossier and it's continuing to be discredited every day. And now New York Times comes out and writes again. Oh, it was actually about the collusion again. They're back to Michael Flynn. What's his name? Michael Cohen. Trump told Cohen to... And that was the BuzzFeed story. So you get the New York Times story, it turns out to be bullshit, and they have to come out with egg on their face and admit it's stupid. Then you get the BuzzFeed story, which Mueller himself has to knock down and everybody knows is bullshit for various reasons. Then you get this story from the kids at Covington Catholic, and then the truth comes out about that, and also about who this so-called Native American guy is. Turns out he's nothing he says he is. He's a Democratic activist. You see him show up in 3 or 4 or 5 different videos. He's essentially a crisis actor for the Democratic Party. He's made all sorts of claims that are untrue. Says he was in Vietnam and he was there in 1976, when in fact I believe the last helicopter out of Saigon was July the 2nd of 1975. 1975. So if he was fighting in combat in Vietnam in 1976, I don't know the hell he was fighting for. maybe the communists. He's been picked up on multiple DUIs, public drunkenness, drunken disorderly, domestic violence. I mean, this guy, he's got a bad criminal history. He's a hack. He's a liar. He's been exposed as such. And it's just another story blown up in the faces of the left-wing media. And what's mind-boggling to me is that their viewers continue to tune in. Can you imagine being a viewer of CNN or MSNBC or a reader of BuzzFeed or the New York Times in the past 7 days? 3 of these big bombshell stories that they came out and spent all day talking about, and they had to spend the very next day telling you why why they got it wrong. I mean, these people, they just make shit up and then they get it wrong. And I guess people continue. Maybe people like that kind of stuff, But 3 times in 1 week, and it's hundreds of times. They've gotten hundreds of stories wrong, and people just keep going back to the trough. They just keep going back to feed for some more of it at the trough. It just doesn't make any sense. Trump derangement syndrome, I guess. Pew Research has a new poll out showing that 53% of people disapprove of how Democrats are handling the shutdown. 53%, according to Pew Research, disapprove. 53% disapprove of how Democrats are handling the shutdown. Let's talk about the Trump Tower meeting. I did an entire video dedicated to the Trump Tower meeting. I went through every single character that was there. I gave every single character who was theirs, who they were connected to, their history, their bio, and everything else, and laid out clearly and made the solid case over a year ago. This is done like in June, July of 2018. A video that I did proving that the Trump Tower was a setup hardcore from the rotten Reverend Clinton and Confusion GPS. Now, we get Devin Nunes, who goes on to Fox, talking to one of the Fox hosts who's filling in. I forget his name. But he's filling in for somebody there. I think, what's her name? The blonde. Well, they're all blonde. But he's filling in for her, and he's talking about Michael Cohen. And then all of a sudden, Nunes just drifts from that question right into talking about why he thinks the Trump Tower meeting may have been a setup. And it's like, wow, that's weird. It was just weird how he transitioned into the Trump Tower meeting when they were talking about Cohen. The question was about Cohen. And then Nunes starts talking about why he thinks the Trump Tower meeting was a setup. Well, of course it was a setup. Go back and watch my video from over a year ago. It was a year and a half ago, where I lay out exactly details. All these people. Now, I don't have time to go through all that again. I don't have 35 minutes to go through and lay out all the information I laid out, going character after character after character, their background, their bio, who they're connected to. I don't have time. But I will take the last 5 minutes and reiterate just some of the major points that prove absolutely 100% for true that Trump Tower meeting was a setup. Was a setup. So yeah, Nunes is right. It's a shame he waited till now to tell us all that. But let's keep in mind that, first of all, Veselnitskaya needed a special visa to get into the country. She had not been permitted to get into the country. Now, we all know, just from reading in the page Strzok text, how difficult it was for a billionaire, Oleg Deripaska, who has a relationship with the FBI and many government officials and politicians. He had Mark Warner working for him through the Senate to try to get him into the country, because he was barred from coming into the country. So here you got a billionaire who has all these contacts. He can't get into the country because he's blocked by barred from coming into the country. You have many people like this. These people hire lawyers, high-dollar lawyers, lobbyists. They have friends. They have all sorts of influence. It could take them months and months, if not years, to try to get approved when they've been barred from entering the country. But somehow, Veselnitskaya, barred from entering the country, gets within like several days, she gets approved for a special visa to enter the country, and 2 days later, she's sitting in Trump Tower. Who made that happen, and why? Next, we know that Veselnitskaya was working for Confusion GPS and Glenn Simpson. And we know that she had been, both were hired by essentially the Russian government. Confusion GPS had been hired by the Russian government to represent them in the Magnitsky Act, as Veselnitskaya had. So she was here, and she was working with Glenn Simpson. Now, Glenn Simpson, at the same time that he's representing the Russian government along with Vetselnskaya, in the Magnitsky case, which is probably the reason they didn't want her in the country. At the same time he's doing that, he's writing a dossier about Trump colluding with Russia, while he's actually representing Russia in the Magnitsky case, along with Vetselnskaya, who just happens to show up at Trump Tower. Because it's in the dossier. Then he puts the story in the dossier. He probably... You just can't make this shit up, my friends. We also know that Vetselnskaya, while she was here, attended got a front row seat to attend the hearings for the Magnitsky Act hearings. She also took a photo, 2 photos actually, from John McCain's office. And we understand that he made a donation to a foundation that she is a part of. We know, of course, that it was Goldstone that reached out to Trump Jr., not the other way around. It wasn't the Trump administration or Trump team or anyone on his team that reached out to get dirt on Hillary. It was they who contacted him. We know that the talking points written by the talking points that Vetselnskaya used in the meeting were written by Glenn Simpson. Simpson says that he had no knowledge of the Trump Tower meeting until a year later when it was reported in the press, despite the fact that he had dinner with Vetselnskaya on the morning of and the day after the Trump Tower meeting. And do you know who was with them? Rinat Akhmechan, the former Soviet-era military intelligence officer, who was one of the sources in the dossier. A former Russian intelligence officer. What was he doing in the meeting? Why did he need to be there? And who are his connections? How did he get there? Who asked him to be there? Why was he there? And did you also know that he was in the country at the time working on behalf of the Russian government? Yet he was not registered as a foreign agent. Why has he not been arrested? Why would the Russian government send a Russian lawyer who does not speak a lick of English to Trump Tower to negotiate whatever, a backroom deal about Hillary Clinton's emails with all those other people around, all of whom said there was never a single word said about any Hillary Clinton emails or dirt on Hillary? Akhmechan. As I said, why was he there? He's a former Soviet-era military intelligence officer. He's working with Confusion GPS to some extent, acting as a translator for Vetselnskaya, along with another person who was there acting as a translator. Why did she need 2? And who does Akhmechan know very well? Well, we know that he was at Halifax International Conference, and he says he may have spoke to David Kramer. That's where Senator Magoo heard about the dossier. And he knows Magoo quite well because he worked on Senator Magoo's campaign when he ran for president. He says that he knows Hillary Clinton and the Clintons very well. He's known them and been friends with them since the 1990s. He, of course, was at the dinner with Vetselnskaya and Glenn Simpson on the morning of and the day after the Trump Tower meeting. He also shared a train ride and drinks and conversation with Ed Lieberman, one of the very closest friends the Clintons have in New York. Very close friends. Mrs. Lieberman served in Bill Clinton's administration. On the very day of the Trump Tower meeting, he was having a train ride and some drinks with Mr. Lieberman. And I could go on and on and on about the connections. Of course, the Trump Tower meeting was a setup. It was in the dossier. All put together by who? Guarantee you, the Rotten Reverend Clinton and Glenn Simpson, along with probably his Mary Jacoby, because, oh, that's right, Mary Jacoby, she was providing information to Akhmechan, or she was getting information from Akhmechan when she was writing stories for the Wall Street Journal back in 2007, 2008. These people go way back, way back. They're all connected. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you. Bye.